Hello everyone, I'm Neverdot. Welcome to my channel. I just ruptured my eardrum. Anyways, this is all about how to draw the perfect pixel art, or more specifically, more accurately, what is true pixel art. And that's what we're more concerned about. I'm not very good at pixel art, and I'm not going to be drawing any of this episode. Today we find ourselves on the r/pixelart subreddit, and we're going to be going through each one of these, and we're going to highlight the rules. Rule number one of pixel art: the best pixel art respects the grid. That's the number one rule right here. Respect the grid. A lot of failures of pixel art is because they violate the grid. And there are, in pixel art's defense, or my defense, there are a lot of wonderful things that we would call pixel art that break this rule pretty readily. Mostly games. You wouldn't do it too much as a static image, but games will do it all the time. Anytime there's parallax, stuff smoothly sliding around, you're breaking the grid. You're not following the restrictions that are in place for the pixel art grid. Now let's look at this one, the windmill. Now here, this is a perfect example of one that's obeying the grid. So we have our chunky pixels all over the place. They're all in their proper gridded space. All the grid is the same size. That's a key part of any grid. Every square has to be the same size. Any pixel art that has variable size pixels, that's a big violation of that rule. So if you're going for the best pixel art, you don't want to be breaking that rule. But also, sometimes pixel art in games often will kind of break this whole stay on the grid. Typically when you're doing animation. So Terraria is a big offender of this, where you have the windmilling arms of the characters when they attack. And that immediately breaks the immersion of being in a pixel art world, because suddenly, oh, this is a vector just floating around. This is a sprite that's being rotated. And it's no longer on the grid. But here we have a windmill with its windmilly thing spinning around. And what are they doing? They're not rotating in 3D space. That's nice. They're not taking a 2D pixel art sprite and just rotating it. What they're doing is redrawing it for every frame. So it's a multi-frame animation. All of the frames are on the grid. Perfect. 10 out of 10. You have fulfilled this rule. Thank you for starting out the video perfectly. Rule number 2. You have to suffer for the medium. What does that mean? Let's look at this next one. This is a great example too. So we've got this cat warrior, whoever this is, and we've got a pixel art version of this character on the right. Now, this is particularly good because it's showing all the issues with the suffering for the medium. See, pixel art has less to work with. That's the whole point of pixel art. You don't have this unlimited space, unlimited detail. You can't zoom in forever and keep having refinements you can make. No, you go down to the pixel level and then you're stuck. That's all you got to do. Here we're drawing the head matches. It's got the ears. It's got the little spikies on the side. That's good. Then we hit the eyes, and here we have a problem. We don't have enough pixels to reflect the whites of the eyes and the pupils. We just don't have the space. We've got at best there 4 pixels to work with, and we're dedicating 2 diagonals to get that diagonal eye shape. But we can't really represent the sort of the oval of the eye. We can't get the iris of the eye, and that's okay. That's pixel art. You have to suffer for the medium. If you're going to live in the space, you have to be limited by the limited dimension. It's almost like there's less of a dimensional space there. So that's perfect. If you look at the circle on the shirt, also, all we got the space for is the 2 by 2 by 2 by 2, and hacking at the, it's basically a square with the corners knocked out. And it's not a perfect circle at all. We could have gone with more colors, I guess, to round it out a little bit, but I would not do that. That actually is a later rule that we're going to be hitting on later. This particular piece actually fulfills many different rules that I'll be bringing up, but for now we're going to focus on the suffer for the medium. And if we look down at other parts, like you've got the sleeve, that tattoo, or not tattoos, but the markings on the upper arm, that could not be represented with the amount of pixels that we have to work with. So we do our best. This artist has put it together as best they can. It's an approximation of it. And if this character were moving around, you would again continue to try to do your best, but you can't. You can't make it perfect because you just don't have the detail, and that is perfect. That's fine. Even the circle here, there should be a gap between the neck, the bottom of the head, and the circle top, and the edges of the shirt, but there isn't because, again, there isn't that much space, and again, that's fine. It's pixel art. Suffer for the medium. Rule number 3 is that the pixel art must be handmade. Every pixel should be laid down well, not by hand, but you know, you should be picking where each and every pixel goes. In digital art, or natural media art, you would use a brush. And in in digital art, you also use a brush. So you've got your stylus, whatever it might be, and you're going to be painting with a natural medium thing. Could be a paintbrush or a pencil or whatever. And you know, you create art that way. That's not pixel art. Pixel art should be done, you know, you're clicking each individual pixel. There is a bit of leeway, I guess, with the line and the polygon tools and whatnot, the circles and things. You can do that, but you probably shouldn't be going for the spray brush. That's a common one that can be abused a little bit. Brushes in general that are beyond just laying down a pixel or a block of pixels, generally tabooed. Stay away from those because you're getting into digital art rather than pixel art. Pixel art, just like if you're talking about like mosaics in tile work on a subway floor or a wall, somebody had to put in each of those tiles and design the pattern that way. They didn't just come along with just a pre-laid sheet and just bloop, put it on there, splat it on there like you bought it from the local hardware store, which you can do, but that's not mosaic art. That's just wallpaper or whatever. And similarly, pixel art should be, each and every pixel should be specially chosen to lay down. And you can notice this if someone has done it, because if you're looking at this piece, we've got I don't know what those are, bugs or something. There's flowers here. Each of these flowers, you can see that it was crafted and chosen how to shape those flowers with the limited pixels that they had at their disposal. The deers, the two-headed deer here, the waterfalls, there's a heart in the distance. All of those things, the smoke coming off of whatever this is, the trees in the distance, all of that was carefully laid and chosen to be that way. We've got the stars here, another little heart in the galaxies, a lot of heart motifs in this piece. But all of this was put together by hand. Each and every pixel was chosen and laid by hand, and that is a critical aspect of the best pixel art. All right, now is that all the rules of pixel art? No, there's a few more. Now, these additional rules they're not hard rules of whether or not it is or isn't pixel art. These are the rules of the vintage. Can you push it up to the next level? It's pixel art plus rules. So if you want your pixel art to not just be pixel art, but to evoke kind of that retro era, that feeling, people that grew up playing pixel art games, or you didn't call them pixel art games, you just called them games back then. But if you want to evoke that sense, there's a few other rules that we've got for you. Number one in the retro category is dithering. If you have any kind of gradient, you're transitioning between colors, usually you are having a more limited palette. And to transition between colors, you couldn't just use the millions of colors that you had available to you. You had to work with the 4 or 6 or 8 or whatever colors you had. So here we have a piece, the skeleton on the wall. And you can see the background is gradated. Each of these square levels, you've got the full intensity, light here. But then it goes to a little bit darker, and then a more darker, and then a more darker, and then completely dark. Oh, even more darker over there. But you can see each of the stages is going through a pattern. It's just using 2 colors, really, to do that whole gradient. So you got full solid light, and then just dot grid to get the lightest shading. And then medium shading is just a perfect checkerboard pattern. And then reversed dotted, with the dark being dominant now, and then the dark being fully dominant and present. So here you have dithering. Dithering is the first retro thing, and if you see that, that's a really nice thing to see. And there's other dithering patterns, or standard dithering patterns. You would typically have this piece over here has a few slightly different ones. You can see around the bubbles, the more intensity here gives you some of the other dithering patterns, and there's a certain feel, you get a certain nostalgic hit when you see good dithering in place, because it's just that certain way of sort of collecting and intensifying the colors as it shifts up in kind of unexpected ways. Because when I looked at them initially, when I was getting used to them, I didn't quite know what the rules were for creating those, and I just assumed it was a computer figuring that out. Nowadays, I think people probably, I don't know how people do it actually, because I don't draw pixel art. I'm just judging other people's pixel art. But it is a strong key to getting any kind of a retro feel to it. So make sure you don't lose that. An earlier piece we looked at here does not have it. So this is a more modern pixel art, and it looks really good. but it is missing that texture of sort of the olden days. Rule number 2 is a limited palette. The retro pixel art always had much more limited palettes than our current millions and billions of colors, if you even have a 10-bit pixel display. So they were limited to color palettes that were in powers of 2. So you had something like 2 colors, or 4, or 8, 16, 32, 64. It went up to like 256, and then you started getting into 16 million. There was a bit of a jump, I think. So if you want to produce art that has more of that feel, you would ramp down your palette size. So this one here, it's shifted itself into more of a sort of a sepia-ish range. Now, technically, if you really want to hit hard on the limited palette aspect of it, don't just limit yourself to like a power of 2 color palette, like 16 or 32, but you've kind of got to look up what they had been stuck with at the time, because there were like specific colors. They were trying to give you all the colors of the rainbow, so it was an even distribution of hues and intensities. Like if you were stuck at 16, I think it was just all maximum saturation colors, and they're all very bright. But then when you got to like 32 and 64, you would have a darker version of each one, and then 256 had a nice spread. This image doesn't actually follow that. It does have a limited palette, but that limited palette is all favoring a particular area of the palette that would not have existed at all. You wouldn't have had this pasty putty color and then a slightly brighter and slightly darker pasty color, because it didn't have that range. They didn't have that much space. You would have needed a palette of 16 million colors to get those colors out of it. So this actually doesn't meet the bar of the limited palette. You would want to have those particular limited colors of being, the evenly spaced out range. So you have to look it up if you want to really, really nail that, particularly if you're hitting down into like the 4 colors or 8 4 colors. That has a particular feel, like there's cyan, magenta, yellow, stuff like that, black, obviously. And to get those, then you're really going to get people into the feel of like, oh my gosh, I was a kid when I was playing that. That's not something I typically see in pixel art. People don't see that anymore. It wasn't attractive to look at the time, and it's not attractive to look at so much now. Some people would do retro Game Boy looks. This 2-bit color, so black and white or black and green, to give you that feel of the LCD screen, I guess it was. But yeah, so this doesn't meet the bar, but still very good. Limited palette does do something, even if it's not the palette of the time. Sticking with some power of 2 palette, or just anything that's below like 64 colors. Even if you could stick to like 32 or 16, you'll start to get that feeling of, not only are you suffering for the medium with regard to the pixels, you're also suffering for the medium with regard to the color choices, because you only have a certain number of colors to work with. So even back then, if you wanted like a purple shirt, you didn't have purple, say, and you had to do with red, blue, red, blue, red, blue checker pattern. So those kind of things would exist in pixel art too. Rule number 3 on the retro scale is chunky. Basically, make sure your pixel art is obviously pixel art. You need to be able to see and feel and touch the pixels. So in this piece here, you can see it's pixel art. Because why? Well, I can see the stair stepping going on with the bench here and the little yellow safety line and all that kind of thing. You can see the power lines jig-jagging as they try to transition to different levels. And if your art is too high res and you're not getting into that, or worse, you're anti-aliasing it such that it smoothly transitions even at the low resolution, you're drifting away from the sort of the spiritual goals of pixel art, which is really to embrace the pixels and to not be ashamed of them, but to show them off. So you really do want those jagged edges, and you want to see, they're not trying to make it look sharp, but it is sharp. Like here, some of the brickwork has edges. So that's nice. It looks good. But we're not trying to like anti-alias all these things here. The tree's not trying to smooth out the little leaves. We do have nice dithering in the sky there. That's a good example. The windows are harsh, which is all great. This is all good. So we want this kind of chunkiness, this kind of solid, thick, present pixels. And we don't want it so high res that you can't tell. Now, if you have done something that's high res, but it's high res because you're just packing so much into it, that's okay, because then you're just basically doing a large pixel art, not a high-res pixel art. There's a difference there. One's a Wimble builder, which is amazing, and the other is just digital art at some point. So you'd want to avoid that. So this is the Be Chonky. Don't be shy. Don't be ashamed of your pixel edges. The last one's kind of a rare one. You don't usually see it. It's something that people that research pixel art would do, but it's not something you'd typically even think to do. But again, in the olden days, there were limited colors. You only had like, say, 16 colors in your palette. That was a bit of a problem, particularly if you, say, wanted to, animate or something like that. Because sometimes you had limited memory, you didn't have enough time, didn't have enough sprite, you couldn't switch out the picture, and you wanted to animate stuff like water. And you wanted to keep animating it all the time, and water follows a particular flow. There was a way to animate without changing the image at all, which is weird, but how do you do it? Well, you take your limited palette of, say, 16 or 32 colors or something, and then you draw the shapes of the water, the waves, in a certain way, such that you can switch palette colors. You can change the colors of the palette. And when you change the colors of the palette, everything that is that color now is that other new color. And to make something animate, you can have it just take the blue color and move it to the next slot on the palette, and you had drawn the next part of the wave in that other color. So then it looks like the wave is moving and flowing continuously because you're constantly moving the colors in the palette up and up and up and up and up to the next position, and then it starts over again and it just keeps cycling. Here we have a knife blade that is possibly doing something like this, where they've got the little dots on the blade, and there's a little bit on the handle there, and the colors are just flowing up. And there's a bit of animation in the background actually, but we're just going to focus on the cycly part at the blade. And it could be using this technique of just having the colors of the palette be changing. And I think back then you could have different colors be the same color, just so that you could have it like on the blade right now. It's got all the little dots, all the same color because they're off. But then you turn them on and it cycles those pixels along different colors, those colors to the next one in the palette. A lot of animation was done that way, more environmental animation. Often it would be like, water flowing, waterfalls, rivers, mostly water, really, just mostly water. Thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed figuring out what is pixel art, what makes pixel art more retro. So we've got our 3 main rules of pixel art and then our 4 additional retro rules. And if you can think of any other rules that I've missed, please leave them in the comments because I want to round out my rule set. I constantly go over these in my head every time I look at pixel art, and so I just want to make sure I nail them all down. A lot of the rules are encapsulated in the very first one. Respect the grid. For instance, different sized pixels in the same piece of art often gets violated. If you're respecting the grid, you couldn't possibly do that. So this is an example of respecting the grid. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. I'll see you guys in the next video I do. Bye.